What's up, guys? This is Acid Root. So I'm going to review Godsmack's 1000 HP or 1000 horsepower. So this album basically came out 4.5 years after the 2010 album, The Oracle, and I kind of was in a disagreement about The Oracle. I kind of thought that that was one of the weaker albums that Godsmack has dropped, but critics seemed to like it a little bit better. It was decent, but compared to like Godsmack of '98, Faceless, I enjoyed Godsmack 4, their 2006 album, the Other Side EP, and even their Greatest Hits album with that extra new track on there. I mean, there was some stuff from the Oracle that just didn't quite hold true. I mean, for one thing, Whiskey Hangover was not on the standard edition, which it probably should have been. I mean, it was kind of. I felt like that you might as well just get the deluxe version because that was where you get the best package. And I wound up buying the Oracle, the original, with just the 10 songs, and it just kind of feels like you get uh, like it busts your chops a little bit just because one of the singles is on the deluxe. If it had just been two other songs, it might have came off better, but there was only three singles on the Oracle if you count just the standard package. And then on top of that, it was kind of under the impression that the Oracle was trying to do different sounds, which it seemed like they were kind of shifting towards more hard rock and more like classic rock kind of feel, more so than the alternative metal and post grunge and new metal that they did back in the early 2000s. So I noticed that, and the singles were really just not as strong as they were in their earlier days. And on top of that, the promotion was kind of a mixed bag. I mean, they had to subdue the songwriting because they went on tour. So I guess I don't know how much they did before they went on tour, but then after that, there were only three singles that were released before pulling the plug on the promotion. So I don't know. It just seemed like Godsmack. I mean, they typically last for like a good year and a half or so, but they didn't really do that time. And plus, the singles, they didn't mesh that well. But with 1000 HP, I can safely put it to rest. Originally, I did not want to purchase this album because I figured, well, they only had three singles on this one, and it really didn't last that long, so I was under the impression that it was going to be the same thing as with the Oracle, but it wasn't, and that's the thing. It was only 10 songs, and I didn't know what to expect from it, so I kind of was going to take a wait and see approach, but now the day has come for me to get to it, and I'm glad to say that it's not a disappointment. I mean, I don't know. I don't want to say it's their worst album, but compared to some of the stuff Godsmack did in the beginning, it's not a bad album, but I don't know if it like trumps like their earliest stuff and their tried and true hits like Keep Away, Whatever, I Stand Alone, uh, Straight Out of Line, some of those records, that sort of thing. So Speak and those type records, but it is a good record, and that's kind of the situation that happens with that sort of thing. Is despite how brief it was, I don't know if they simply wanted to get back to just getting on tour and kind of relaxing a bit or whatever, but the promotion for this album wrapped up with just about 9 or 10 or so months, and so I don't know, but I did like. We'll talk about the singles now. uh, 1000 HP. 1000 HP basically sounds just like Godsmack's first record. Basically sounds just like Whatever and Keep Away from 1998. Has a very similar aesthetic to that, and the songwriting process is spot on. I did appreciate that song. I thought it was going to be more hard rock, but it sounded just like alternative metal. And we'll talk. They do try some new things that I like. We'll get to that, but that's kind of how that works. So, second single was something different. And apart from like songs like Voodoo and Serenity, I don't know how many times they've done like post grunge type songs for singles. They typically do not. And most of the time they have rougher and more brazen songs for their single process, but this one was kind of a surprise and I liked it. I mean, I don't know if it hit #1 on the rock charts, but I did enjoy that record. It's kind of something you'd expect from like Puddle of Mud or one of those type groups. I can't remember them now. Uh, some of them cats, like the guys that did Mud Shovel, I forget what they're called. Yeah, I don't remember. They did Mud Shovel though and a couple other records, but Stained, that's who it was. But yeah, it's a nice fit for Godsmack to try something new. And then they kind of came back to like heavy metal with the song What's Next, and that one was stellar. I mean, I felt like the verses were too short, but it was a very hype song. I felt like that one was even more ferocious than 1000 HP, and considering the title, you would think that that wouldn't be the case, but it was. And that's the thing. I mean, they did not really promote that single very well, and I don't know why they didn't, but it did happen to it was another solid hit for them. But I do kind of feel like they probably should have done a fourth single. Would have been neat for them to have done it. And I think the song I would have chosen would have been the song Turning to Stone, because that one was just like the song Voodoo. Almost immediately like it, had an off key and kind of different production to it. And I mean, he basically sang in like the same style and kind of hypnotic way that he did with like Serenity and Hypnose, or not Serenity and Voodoo and those type songs. He doesn't do that on every album. He kind of did that a little bit on the Other Side EP also. Tried some new stuff, but that's another new type record. So something different and Turning to Stone are two different kinds of themes for Godsmack that work rather well. So, but beyond that, since there's only 10 songs, and I wound up liking 7 out of 10, I mean, this album is going to get a high score, but I suppose the only real weakness to it is just the fact that I mean, some of the longer songs didn't quite motivate me to listen the whole way through, and I know Godsmack probably could do power ballads, but I guess the song topics didn't interest me that well. Like Nothing Comes Easy, and I was trying to figure out what Generation Day was about. So, but it's not like these are complaints like the song Full Blown sucks. I simply feel like it was not quite as ear grabbing for me as I would have liked. So, but they do have plenty of hits on here as far as that's concerned. They do have plenty of hits like they do have album cuts like Locked and Loaded, Living in the Gray, Fuck My Life, some of those, Turning to Stone, like I said. So it really does have like some album cuts. I can't say like Oracle to where it felt like it was just the singles this time. They did it. They successfully did it. For me to only have disliked 3 songs, I mean, considering how short the album was, 3 songs out of 10 that I did not like is outstanding. That's kind of the thing there. So I'm going to give this album an 8 out of 10. I do recommend it just because of how many hits that they had. I mean, I suppose the only real complaints is that some of the longer songs were not quite as catchy, and then I would have liked a 4th single. They totally should have done Turning to Stone, but it just felt like they were kind of in a rush, and I didn't understand where that came from. Didn't know. I mean, they had been gone 4.5 years, had been gone since like the summer of 2010, show up at the tail end of summer of 2014, and then they're only there for like 8 months or whatever. So it was just kind of, I didn't know where that came from as far as just not really messing with it. So that's kind of the thing, but that's more of just like band complaints more so than music complaints. That's kind of the thing. So yeah, that like the social score, although the singles were all good, I'd still have to give it like a 7 just because I felt like they did have the hits on this project, and maybe they just wanted to get back and relax a little bit more, but a 4th single probably would have, especially considering it just seems like, I mean, I wasn't listening to rock radio back in 2010 and early 2014 and such, but to kind of say whether or not they played these songs on the radio, I mean, at least my local rock, they only play like the first single and then songs like I Stand Alone and Straight Outta Line these days from Godsmack. So the promotion just for it doesn't last very long for these type albums. So I'd like to kind of hear some of their discography. I don't know why that is. I mean, it just seems like Godsmack is forever haunted by their early days more so than things they've continued to do. And this record is really not that bad, so I wouldn't understand where that comes from. But this is kind of the thing. So it's not a bad record. It's memorable. The singles are good. but just between the past beliefs of just being sold too much on their old shit, and then that companion with the promotion just not being that well put together, kind of leads us to kind of sabotage themselves in some ways. So, but yeah, I give this an 8 out of 10 and a 7 social. I think that's what I said, a 7 social. So yeah, subscribe for more fun. Alright folks, so in the original review I forgot to list the songs that I enjoyed from 1000 HP, so I'm going to do that real quick. These are the 7 songs I recommend to you. So, Fuck My Life, Something Different, 1000 HP, Locked and Loaded, What's Next, Turning to Stone, and Living in the Gray. All top notch.